Welcome to this session on UGC Psychology. In this class, we will be talking about the previous year's papers and the trends for UGC Psychology examination. Since psychology is an upcoming field, a lot of students who are facing this exam are having troubles with solving the questions with psychology because especially paper 3 has a lot of conceptual and applicative sections. Now let's understand the existing trend of the paper so that we can think about it, how to prepare. So the paper is usually consists of paper 2 and paper 3. So paper 2, as we see, has 50 questions and the duration is 1 hour 15 minutes and the questions are 2 marks each. So you have to solve 50 questions in 75 minutes. So for one question you have around 1.5 minutes. That's a very decent time. So time wise you shouldn't have an issue with paper 2. Now the thing is, in paper 2, let's understand the trend of examination. We have December 2012, June 2013, and then December 2013 that we are discussing in this slide. So let's see how the number of questions have changed. More or less, the questions on most of the topic are similar, except 3 of the topics where the importance has gone up drastically. So the first is biological basis of behavior. So you have neurons, brain structure, genetics, endocrine system, hormonal changes. So all that goes into the biological basis of behavior. Then you have the subtopic on intelligence. And finally is the research methodology. Research methodology in 2013 December, there were around 12 questions from research methodology and 12 questions from biological basis of behavior, which makes it a substantially good section. Okay, so that means for paper 2, these 3 topics are very important to prepare, and besides that there are equal distribution of questions from the remaining all the topics. Now let's move to paper 3. In paper 3 you have 75 questions which are to be attempted in 135 minutes. So per question you have 1 minute and 40 seconds, which is a decently good time. Again, time is not a problem with UGC psychology as a subject because you do not have a lot of numericals that you have to solve it. As per paper 3 analysis, we have found out that abnormal psychology, the weightage has increased drastically, and memory and motivation are the topics which are covered more, and the questions in these are much more applicative and conceptual. So this is the comparison between December 2012 and June 2013. And as we can see, the research methodology, the questions are around 8. Motivation, you have 8 to 9 questions. Again, memory, you have 8 to 9 questions, and exceptional importance to abnormal psychology with around 12 questions, which has increased from around 2 to 3 questions in December 2013. So this tries to tell us two things. Firstly, the topics that are increasing in importance are mostly applicative. So you have research methodology, then abnormal psychology, you have biological basis of behavior, motivation, intelligence, and memory. These are the topics which are increasing in weightage. Now, another trend that we can see is none of the trend is stable. You have frequent fluctuations in all trends. That means the paper pattern is becoming more and more dynamic. So you cannot say this is the only topic that I should prepare well and I'll get through the examination. So that's not the case with this. Now, let's analyze the type of questions that are asked. So first type of questions that are asked, we are picking up questions from December 2013 examination. So first type of question that are asked are based on rote memory. So the visible spectrum wavelength range from. So this is a question you must know. So the answer is A, 380 to 760 nanometers. This is a kind of direct question, a typical human eye response to this wavelength. And this is something which is visible under a simple natural light. This is a question based on clear learning. You do not have to apply any concept or anything. Now, this is a question where confusion pops in. It's a simple question but makes confusing. Now don't look at the answer, just try to understand the question. Shyam does not like to be in the family gatherings, but his mother has asked him to attend it. He decides to tell a lie that he has an examination on the day, however he finds it very distasteful. Shyam is experiencing which kind of conflict? Now in this question there are two things that are important. Shyam has a dislike towards family gathering, that's the first point to be noticed. The second point here is He tells a lie, but since he is telling a lie, he is not feeling very comfortable and he is not liking what he said. That means he told a lie and he is not liking it. That means he is trying to avoid that thing, and again he is trying to avoid the family gathering. So there are two parameters that he is trying to avoid. So this is a case of double avoidance conflict. That is similar if you similar to a issue that, for example, you have a tooth problem. Okay, so now you are seeing day by day that your tooth is having a problem. So you do not want your tooth to have a problem, and on the other hand, you do not even want to visit a dentist. So that's a kind of double avoidance conflict. So you do not want to do this and you do not want to do that. So that is a confusion that pops in where students fail to understand whether it's a double avoidance or a approach avoidance. That's the most common confusion people have in this kind of questions. So these are the kind of confusing questions that are asked. The next type of question is something based on memory, but the ocean is so deep, you don't know what to study, what to leave. So this is a question from that kind of phenomena. So this again from December 2013. There are various parts of the brain that are explained, and you are asked, going from higher to lower level of the brain, what is the correct sequence? Now let's see. This can be understood very well from this diagram. So there are two diagrams. The first diagram shows the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. And second diagram shows the parts of it. So in the first case, you have prosencephalon, which is the forebrain, mesencephalon, which is the midbrain, and rhombocephalon, that's the hindbrain or the backside of the brain. So forebrain is the front brain. Now the blue section, which is the forebrain or the prosencephalon, has two parts, telencephalon and diencephalon. Then you have mesencephalon as such, and rhombocephalon again has two parts. First is metacephalon and diencephalon. So now if you are asked the correct order would be telencephalon, then diencephalon, then you will move to mesencephalon, metencephalon, and diencephalon. So that's the correct order. So in these kind of questions, what is required is extensive learning. Read and read as much as you can. So more you read, the more knowledge you have and more difficult or applicative questions you can solve. So this is something about knowing and knowing. Now, the final type of question we would be discussing for the UGC is the conceptual question. Now, this is a section where most of students get struck up. Now, action potential, resting potential, membrane, impulse, these are the topics where most of the students have difficulty in. Now, the best thing here is to understand this topic in detail. So, before we solve this assertion reason question, let us understand the concept of neurotransmission. So we'll start here. Just look into the figure. So here is an action potential that we are trying to explain. So here is a neuron and the axon. So the movement that is shown depicts how the signal changes from one place to another, or it moves from dendrites to axons through the various voltage gated channels. Now what we are trying to see is the structure of the neuron here. So you have the outside of the cell and you have the inside of the cell. The inside of the cell you have sodium ions and outside you have the potassium ions. So sodium ions are the positively charged ions and we say the potassium ions are the negatively charged ions. But what happens is we are talking about the sodium potassium pump here. So what happens is the sodium ions move out and potassium ions come in. Now, most of the students, I'll pause here, most of the students have a problem understanding. Ma'am, you have sodium, it's Na plus, and again potassium, it's Na plus. Then that means both should be positive. Why? One is positive, one is negative. Now, let me explain this first. When we talk about sodium, you have the positive sodium ions, and we talk about potassium. Along with potassium, you have highly negatively charged protein and nucleic acid molecules, and because of that this becomes negative. So you have, we call it negatively charged potassium ions. Okay, now let's understand the exchange of sodium potassium pump here. So what's happening is sodium ions are going out and potassium ions are coming in. So when potassium ion comes in and sodium ion goes out, what happens is there is a positive charge on the outside and the negative charge on the inside. This positive and negative charge is what is known as the resting potential, or that is the stable state of any nerve. So you have positive ions outside and negative ions inside. Now what happens, slowly the sodium channel opens up and the potassium channels close. So what happens is all the sodium ions rush into the cell. So when they are moving into the cell, what is happening is it's a state of depolarization that is trying to appear inside the cell. So you have all the positive ions coming in, but the negative ions currently are not moving out. Now what happens is you have the positive ions that are coming up, and slowly then you have the negative ions that are outside. Okay, so this is the phase of action potential, and this action potential is caused by depolarization. So since there is a depolarization, you have action potential. Now since there is an action potential, you need to bring it to a resting phase. So to bring it to a resting phase, what will happen is the sodium ions would, the sodium gated channels would close, and on the other hand, the potassium channels would open up. As the potassium channels open up, the potassium ions start to move out. So all the negative ions are trying to move out, and positive ions are trying to come in. And there is a change in the phase that is going to establish. So you have a positive ion that is going out and the negative that's coming in. So that is again a state of resting potential that is being established. And this is how the polarity of any cell changes. And it changes from action potential to resting potential and vice versa. So this is how we explain the voltage gated channels. Now let's come back onto the question that we have. So here is the question. During the action potential, there is a change in polarization of ions across neural membranes. So that's very correct, because during an action potential, as we can see, there is change in polarization. So first depolarization occurs and then repolarization occurs. That depolarization is known as the action potential. So all the negative ions are transported outside the neural membrane. That's an incorrect statement here, as we can see, because what's happening, the positive ions are coming in. So assertion is correct and reason is incorrect. So the correct answer choice is C. A is true and R is false. So this is how we can understand the conceptual section and solve it. Now let's have a brief outlook about the scoring strategy. So in UGC examination, you have 40% as the passing marks. So even if you get 20 questions correct in paper 2, sorry, you'll have passing marks. It seems small, but it is tricky. Also, there is no negative marking, which is a positive point. So you can appear for more and more questions. You can tick mark more and more questions, but make sure you are answering the questions based on your knowledge. But since there is no negative marking, I definitely suggest to students not to leave out any question, attempt all the questions. The major topics that the student needs to emphasize is biological basis of behavior, that includes brain, nervous system and neurons, nerve transmission. Then the topics on research methodology and statistics, t-test, ANOVA, chi-square, inferential statistics, descriptive statistics, those are all important topics. So since research methodology is an important part for PhD and MPhil, any student who is appearing for UGC NET examination is considered to know at least the basic research methodology and statistics. So the important topics here that you need to know are regression, correlation, F-test, t-test and ANOVA. Now the objective questions, there are standard format. So you have 4 alternatives that you have to choose in. Make sure some of the questions have the word not. So just don't ignore the word not. Most of the questions, most of the students forget to see the word not, and then they mark the answer incorrectly. And then when they come back home, they realize, oh, there was not in this question. I skipped that. Okay. So read the question properly. Make sure you are totally highly attentive during the examination. And the best way to have good attention is have a sound sleep before the examination. Then some of the questions are subjective. That means the option says which of the following best describes the phenomena. Best describes means there can be 2 or 3 options that are correct, but which is most applicable. Okay, then there are questions based on judgment, which is the most correct statement. So you have to judge. Based on the question, you have to solve the problem. And then there are questions which says 1 and 2 are correct, 2 and 3 are correct. So you have multiple answers that are correct. So these are the various formats in which UGC questions are asked. Assertion reason is an important section where the students get struck up. So we have discussed all the type of questions that are asked, the major weightage given to the various sections during the various papers. So we have analyzed the past trends in UGC examination. Hope this presentation was useful. In the next sessions, we would be talking more about the important topics to be covered in psychology and what are the best things that you can prepare with psychology. Have a good day ahead.